Play Watch Listen is supported by Patreon. Patrons recently got an extra episode kind of as a bonus. Plus, they get episodes early, unedited if there are any edits, and the huge win of knowing that they're helping this weird show exist. So if you want to support Play Watch Listen, click the link in the description or go to patreon.com/CharAlanah.
Should we just record this entire thing without ever addressing the lack of Mike or Troy, the presence of Liam? Should we just 100% play it straight?
What do you mean that's not Troy?
Yeah.
Right. I've been here the whole time. I directed the whole of Stray Gods. You know, it was a really difficult project.
He pulled out the accent and everything, I think. That was really good.
I just realized my camera
the one
is
accent I
super
can
weird
do.
angle.
I can also do the American accent very easily. Get them to do an Australian, it's a disaster.
You do the...
We grow up with it.
Yeah, it's true.
You do the like...
My news broadcaster, that's my favorite one. I can also do Valley Girl.
The Valley Girl one comes awfully naturally to you, but I think the kind of AI one where you just...
Austin Wintory.
Yeah,
How
you just
are
like
you today?
basically Siri.
Yeah, I've done
or Alexa or whatever.
I've done robots in 4 games actually, and an animated series.
What does that say about you?
It makes sense.
That I can do a great robot voice.
Yeah, but I think you should really kind of search inward about the subtext of your emotional...
I can tell you the subtext, Austin. I know what it is. I'll tell you.
We don't have to dig deep.
That's a neurodivergence is what that is.
Yeah, exactly. I think
I've been diagnosed. It's fine.
You've been diagnosed
everyone.
and then flipped it into professional opportunities.
Yeah, and then exploited it. It's great. Welcome to Play Watch Listen. We're entering at the start of the show because the setup's a little different today. Obviously, that's Austin Wintory. He is a video game music boy and podcast host. And this is Liam, who's our first ever guest on this show. Did you know that, Liam? Did I tell you you're our first ever guest?
No, but that's cool.
Here you
I'll
are.
take that. What a
Fuck you,
win.
Greg.
Yeah, technically Craig Miller was on for 10 seconds. Mike is not feeling well. And I spoke to Troy last week, and obviously we got a lot of comments about Troy not doing the show recently. It seems like Troy will not be able to do the show for the foreseeable future, but we'll have him back anytime that we can. Yeah, like we had him on, I think he was only maybe on 2 episodes this year anyway. It was the Last of Us episode. So I think probably like the next time Troy has something big coming out, we'll have him come back. But today we have Liam. Liam, who are you? Why are you here?
My name is Liam. As previously mentioned, I'm the managing director of Summerfall Studios. I almost forgot the name of the company that I co-founded because
Liam's jet lagged.
I'm currently in Stockholm in Sweden, extremely jet lagged. So I apologize. But yeah, I run Summerfall Studios with David Gator and Ellie Young. And we had the great pleasure of working with Mr. Austin Wintory here and Troy Baker on Stray Gods, the role-playing musical.
Comes out this week, you guys.
This week.
It'll already be out by the time this...
by the time you will see this, it will
Yeah, I'm
be out.
streaming it, I think, on Thursday. I'm very excited
I didn't know about
it.
that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you wanted to join, but we can figure that out later, so I'm not just putting you on the spot. And before we discuss Stray Gods, if you will indulge me, I just wanted to talk to you about something else entirely. I saw Taylor Swift last night.
Yeah, I saw your little glimpses.
It's the most insane thing I have ever experienced, and I now look at the world differently. For context, I'm not being hyperbolic.
No, I mean, look, it's already made all this headlines as the most financially successful tour in music history.
I feel differently about mankind. So I'm not a Swiftie, which Swiftie is the word they use for like people who are like hardcore Taylor Swift fans. Okay, so like the only songs I knew are the really popular ones. I'm not like, I don't pay attention to. I guess she does like coded stuff, and people get really into deciphering everything. I'm not that kind of Swift person, but again, knew all the popular songs.
But your life has been changed.
Yeah, so I went because...
Let's phrase it this way. You weren't a Swiftie going in.
I still don't think I am. I don't want those people to ruin my life for saying this, but they're a little bit much. I don't know about all that. But I went because I love a live performance, and I love experiences. So I'll pay a lot of money for a crazy experience, and that is absolutely what I had. I have never heard anything so loud, so consistently. 3 hours straight of people screaming at the top of their lungs. It didn't relent once. I had to put headphones in, which I guess you should do for a lot of live music anyway. But
I don't go anywhere. We've been to a lot of, like, we went and saw Muse. We're gonna go to like a metal festival soon and see.
I saw
Muse
that. Austin and I want to go to that
requires-
too. Is that the one with like Iron Maiden?
Yeah, and
Did I say Austin or
Metallica and
Marvel?
Zeppelin, and
We're thinking about going to that.
you should. It's
So I've-
it's where they do Coachella near Palm Springs.
I might go. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that you, especially as a musician, would always know to do that. I never had before. And for reference, majority of the music shows that I've been to are metal. Like, I was going to, it was called Soundwave in Australia, if you remember, Liam.
I do.
Yeah, good times. And that's almost all of them. This is like maybe the only actual pop concert I've ever been to. And the fact that the Swifties go so much harder than all of the
metalheads,
by so much. Like, I went in and I think that SoFi, when extended for larger shows, can fit 100,000 people. I understand what a pop star is now. Like, it's just like, sure, Taylor Swift was there and she's great, but it was more the crowd and that amount of people just all at the same time losing their fucking minds over one human. And just like, I kept being like, how must she feel? Like, to have
that would be
that famous?
I was just talking about this with Angela a week or two ago, where it was like, I was like, the number of followers that someone in her position has across different social media platforms is literally like continents of people.
Yeah.
Well, not even like Costa Rica, for example, is like 6 million people or 5 million people or something like that. And I was like, she could lose 5 million followers and it would look like a rounding error. It wouldn't even notice. Like, you're talking about hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
And I was like, at that point, I wonder if people feel real to you. Like, I don't even know what, my brain can't fathom it. And I can't, it also doesn't seem like, it doesn't really seem fun to me.
No, not at all. It seems awful.
I mean, celebrity seems awful generally. Imagine that at like an extreme, insane level where literally, a sixth of the
everyone
world
knows who you are.
follows you.
Yeah, it's crazy. I had previously felt like, I had a theory that, I might have even said this on a show, Michael Jackson is the most famous person ever, and I don't know if we are able to beat that again because now everyone has like micro followings. But last night I was like, oh, maybe Taylor Swift is up there with Michael Jackson, and that, like, I think it would be horrific. But like, how do you go anywhere or do anything? You can't leave your own house.
You can't live a life.
No, because you belong to everybody. Like, you can't go to the beach. People are allowed to harass you effectively because you're a celebrity. Like, what do you can't do anything. It sounds awful, but
like,
I was
you
just
have to have an entirely constructed world. It's
or just a
wild.
nice house. Like, that's like your
A really
only
big,
option.
nice house.
Yeah, and it's watching her, play piano, whatever she was doing. She had a couple of acoustic sets, which was cool. And just like, if she smiles, people scream. Like, and I can't even imagine what it would be like from her perspective, looking at that many people and just like, at what point is she not human? Like, it's not
like,
a human experience.
It's literally Homelander from The Boys, where she could just point at someone in the crowd and go, kill them. And
Someone would probably do it.
they would just ravenously consume them like
Just
zombies.
Nuts. That's what I mean about, like, my impression of mankind is slightly different now, where like I had a version of Taylor Swift that existed in my head that I think is like a brand that's been curated, which is like, I saw her as a sort of wholesome, homely cat mother. Like, that's kind of what was in my head.
Well, not
and
homely.
now, oh, sorry,
Homely means like
means a different.
ugly.
No, it means a different thing in America. I always forget. I get tripped up
really?
on that at SMS. Yeah,
Yeah.
homely in Australia means like cozy, of the home. It's fucked up actually that for you guys it's ugly woman.
Yeah,
I
you're
think-
all wrong.
Is homely
Sorry.
is homely gendered? I thought
Yes,
like if
American, it traditionally means ugly woman.
Yes.
oh, that's funny.
It
I
just
always
means like of the home.
Yep.
we say homie for that without
Yes,
the L.
I know because I've been corrected at work when they were like, "What did you call that ugly?" Like, no, it's such a weird one. But homie.
Homie,
But
yeah.
now, after seeing it perform, I was like, no, you are just like a full blown mega corporation of a human pop star. She's
You know the
very good, very confident, very sexy in a way that I didn't expect her to be performance-wise. Like, beautiful costuming. I was like, this is, this is... And at what point do you stop? Like at a certain point when you just have that much money, don't you go, just gonna disappear now?
I'm bowing out. I'm gonna go chill in a castle on an island somewhere.
Right? I think, but by reputation, I've never met her, but I've talked with folks that have worked with her in various capacities, and by all reputation, behind closed doors and in more isolated professional settings, she actually really does care about the music and care about her work.
And care about making music.
Yeah, like I think she would be doing it if she was making far less than she is. The fact that she's so successful is just validation that she's doing something that people are responding to. True. Obviously. But it's not, the money isn't the means to some end, it's the other way around. As far as like, and that's the ideal, like, when I look at it and, of course, there's like all the, there's merchandising and there's all the various ways that like it gets sort of the profit is sort of maximized. But of all the people that you could look at who are in that sort of demographic of level of success, like big movie stars, big pop stars, she's one of the most beloved for at least very effectively projecting that she cares about her fans. I mean, like all the taking Ticketmaster to task, for example, and being like, I don't want there to be like gatekeeping to people to come to my shows. And so I'm like, hey, if she's pocketing...
give, I think, every part of her crew $1 million bonus this week. I guess it's that I'm coming from a very self-centered perspective, which is like, if I were that famous, I would want to stop as soon as possible. But maybe it's like something she's so used to.
I don't know if that's even true about you, though, because you make stuff that you don't have to make.
Like, I make it because it's fun and it's small. It's like,
well, okay, it's a fair difference, but
way too big. Like, I have some friends who are like, the most successful YouTubers on the planet, like the most, like very well known. And I had a conversation with one of them recently where they were like, I'm just like waiting till I have enough money that I can disappear from the internet. And I was like, how do you not already have it? There's no hope for any of us if you don't have enough money already. Like,
I think that goalpost moves a little bit.
That's what I'm thinking, is once you become rich, you just keep wanting more rich, and then you don't know
your
when
standard of living changes.
Right.
I've spoken to a bunch of celebrities about this, and it's like just the rectangle of your life shifts, and it continually changes, and you don't notice it happening until one day you look back and you're like, oh my God. And it's kind of too late to go back, and your perception of everything is so warped. And like, these are lovely, sweet people who mean incredibly well and who are very articulate and smart, but just the experience of having that much quote unquote success different now. And money, it's just different now.
You are describing in a way the Shea Stadium story of the Beatles. The apex of Beatles mania, where they played a show where the audience was so loud they couldn't hear their own instruments, and they quit touring after that. They basically became a band that does studio albums. That was the mission after Shea Stadium of like, well, live gigs they suck now. Even though it's a good thing, people are so ravenously in love with you that they just don't know how to contain themselves.
The Beatles. Didn't he, like, one of them got in a lot of trouble for saying the Beatles are bigger than Jesus? But it's like, well, kind of had a point. Like, Taylor Swift up there with bigger than Jesus, to be honest. Yeah, it was just, just absolutely unfathomable, the amount of people. And I'm also very used to going to concerts that mostly have men in the crowd, because I'm going to see, like, System of a Down.
Yeah,
right.
Was the last one. I mean, Blink-182 was still mostly men. And I think mostly women is like a lot more screaming. Like, I don't know if that's just because it was Taylor Swift, but it was almost entirely women, which was actually like a really nice vibe. People were handing out these friendship bracelets.
Aww.
It was very cute. Yeah, and I've never seen more pink in a stadium in my life. It was like, oh, look at all the pink. It was actually like very nice.
And you went and saw the Barbie movie, so...
I did. Nowhere near as much pink as SoFi Stadium last night. It was just
that
just
place
insane.
is gigantic, though. I mean, that place has like pushing close to 100,000 capacity. I think,
Yeah,
or
so
80,000 or
it's
something.
75 normally, and then they said for bigger shows it can be expanded to just over 100,000. So the last time I was there was for the Super Bowl, and this was bigger than the Super Bowl. Like it legitimately was more sold out than the Super Bowl. So I think the capacity was probably 100,000, which is just insane. Just a wild, unfathomable experience where I couldn't stop thinking about what it must be like to be Taylor Swift in that moment. Like, just broke my brain looking at this volume of people, because they gave us those like light up wristbands that flash in time with music. So you could just see everyone all the time. And it's just unfathomable what humans can like
That's
get
a really
behind and how much
interesting
you
point.
can change something.
Because like normally in a show, like when you're on stage, you actually can't see the audience. And so those wristbands make it so that she sees that's
Each
wild.
individual person. Yeah. Crazy.
And I know that that's part of the point, right? As I recall, like she wants to be able to see and connect with everyone in the audience. I think that was the part of the narrative around it.
Row ZZZ, like quarter mile away from me. Kill them. You will die.
I don't know. I assume so.
One
Look, it looks
person
cool
is
for us.
offered his corn harvest tribute each show.
Yeah.
And she could if she wanted. She wanted to run for president. I think she'd succeed. It's just weird how
Considering our prior president's biggest claim to fame was being a reality TV star, I think that
Americans
this is
like it.
as much of a sort of claim, if not a marginally better
Slightly
one.
more. Yeah, it's just unfathomable the way we just pick someone. You know, like she's still just a regular person, really, but we just like someone just sort of gets selected and then just, you know, they walk the same planet as everybody else, but just become that. And that, like, no matter what now, I guess with her, she can't really retire because people will always know what she looks like and who she is.
She's always going to be Taylor Swift.
Yeah, and you just can't see what life is like without it. I don't know.
Everything fades. I mean, look at someone like Dave Chappelle, who he disappeared from public life for a long time and moved to like rural where I can't even, like, Ohio or so, and like this, he was one of the most famous comedians on the planet for year after year.
But I mean, Taylor Swift dwarfs even the height of his fame.
No question. I for sure. Like, yeah, it's an order of magnitudes beyond, but I feel like all things eventually, like, public attention can be quite short, and she's managed to do something amazing like she's sustained a level of popularity already, even that's pretty impressive, and I don't see any reason why she seemingly couldn't keep that going for a while. But if she just put a hard stop, really?
Jesus.
Yeah, she's like sustained it for a very fucking long time. Yeah. Well, Chappelle...
It just makes me think of Madonna, right?
Good point. She's very famous. Like, and still very famous, even though she's kind of stopped making... People know her on TikTok now, I think, because she posted that horrific bathtub thing.
Madonna's son's in selfie.
But Chappelle still sells out stadiums.
Well, he's obviously had a resurgence, and
but
you know,
chose
courting
to.
Controversy certainly helps.
Yeah.
But he chose it. Yeah, he leaned back in. That's the point. But but just like independent of that, there was a time where he had been out of the public consciousness for years, and I'm sure he was able to live some semblance of a normal life. Because, like, I bet the people in his small town were like, "Oh yeah, that's Dave." Like he's pretty famous, but that's also like now he's Dave to us or whatever. And he probably chose a super isolated community in part for that reason. I would guess. You know.
Yeah, true.
I don't know. Obviously, these are things even the small scale, like when I've had folks over here to the studio before who were recognizable by folks on the street. It's always fascinating where we're hanging, they're relaxed. It's obviously it's chill. It's usually pretty much every case it's because we have some professional reason to be in the room together. And then I feel them as they're leaving. They're putting on the sunglasses and they're doing the thing in order to get to their car, just to not be stopped, basically. And it's like, this is what I always thought was so cool about being a composer, is you can work on a stuff that's potentially heard and appreciated or enjoyed or whatever by millions of people, but you effectively never get bothered because
Most
people have no
don't
clue
know
what you
what
look
John
like.
Williams looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John Williams, Hans Zimmer, Danny Elfman. Look
Yeah.
at the most well-known composers.
Maybe Danny Elfman gets recognized a little bit. He's a little iconic.
Only recently, because he's been performing live in the last
True.
couple of years and like leaning into this kind of like, I'm a 70-year-old guy covered in tattoos who's astonishingly ripped for a literal 70-year-old.
Yeah.
It's wild.
And like, so he's kind of carved out a slightly unique.
I guess he's a performer now as well, because I know he's still composing.
He's a personality now. Like,
Well, it's that he's
as much as
gone
a
back
composer.
to it, you know, because he was the front man of Oingo Boingo in the 80s before he
That's right.
decided to
I always forget
pause
that.
Holy
Yeah.
shit, I forgot that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's a fun
he was
one.
on screen. He was on screen singing "Dead Man's Party" shit. It's embarrassing that I'm blanking on the movie.
Wow, Austin. I can't believe
was
you would
it-
forget a movie
Why
in which a
you like
musical
this?
thing happened.
Seriously,
I understand
what
if
the
you want to
fuck is
leave,
wrong with
Liam.
me?
It's fine.
No, actually, I should be the one to leave. I don't deserve this spot amongst your company. Well, look, I know that obviously we have Liam here, and it would be remiss to not pick his brain about Stray Gods. But do you mind if I briefly also talk about in the vein of like shocking levels of success, a la Taylor Swift, just a brief moment about Baldur's Gate, because
I was just gonna
it's so
say,
good.
beautiful segue.
yeah,
Into
it really
Baldur's
was.
Gate.
Taylor, the Swifties of D&D, who are appreciating Larian this week.
Yes.
I just want to say, I found this weird like thread that kind of went a little bit viral of effectively developers being like, this is bullshit. Don't pay too much attention to the, like, you saw this article that I'm sure made the rounds of basically saying, this is Rockstar. The quote was, this is Rockstar level scope nonsense. And like, fans should not treat this as a new benchmark. It's too far outside the data set. And it felt
I saw
like
Rami tweet about it. I did not see what you're referring to because I don't think I spend enough time on Twitter anymore, but I did see a tweet from Rami that was about Baldur's Gate 3 that was something about like, in response to this conversation, my biggest take is, I think he said something along the lines of, I wish that publishers would take more risks on games like this. That's the part of it that's really unrealistic.
Yes.
But I didn't see the source that caused that controversy, which is ultimately basically people being like, this game's unrealistically good.
it felt
and
very
large.
dismissive.
Wow.
It felt like the most cynical take was, it felt like fellow developers feeling like, holy shit, this is so
Yes.
beloved.
And being so threatened by it.
And being
That's
like
a shame.
jealous.
Wow.
Yeah, it
I don't
was
think I've ever
weird.
seen that before. That's a real shame. It is very good. Like, but I mean, I love Larry.
I genuinely cannot wait to play it, but because like our game's coming out in just a few days and I've been traveling, I haven't had a chance to even sit down.
I love it.
and check it
I
out
asked
yet.
you on this podcast to promote a different game, even though yours comes out this week.
Fuck
Sorry,
that game. Let's
Liam.
talk about Baldur's Gate 3. It's genuinely such an impressive achievement.
Yeah.
And I think people forget that Larian is totally independent. It's owned by Sven and his wife. And
Crazy.
like, they have had a team of 400 people working on this game for over 6 years. It is
I played it 4 years ago at a
monumental
preview event.
achievement. Yeah.
Holy crap.
Which is crazy. Like,
By
I've
the
never
way, it
had
was
I've never
Rodney
had those two things
Dangerfield.
separate apart.
It was the 1986 Rodney Dangerfield movie Back to School.
Thank you.
This
Austin,
was
you are
bugging me.
redeemed.
Thank
In
you.
the eyes of Play Watch Listen, you're allowed to stay.
Thank God.
It was 400 people for Baldur's Gate 3, but I imagine not for... That's so big for an indie studio.
Yeah, I can't imagine that was for all of development, but like I'm
No.
sure that at its peak, and that would have just been the people internally too. Like normally when we give these numbers, we're cutting out outsourcing studios,
Right.
which also do a huge amount of work, particularly around like environment art,
Yeah.
assets, etc.
I'd be curious what that breakdown is for them. Like, what's the difference
too.
for internal? Because, like, for example, I know their composer is internal. He's staff.
Yes,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not normally
Whoa,
a
that's
position that's
interesting.
internal.
Huh.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
for
he-
those larger companies, it's like Obsidian had an internal composer for the longest time, and
Really?
he composed all of the games. Yeah, he is
Justin Bell.
incredible. Yeah, Mr. Bell is. I mean, he doesn't work there anymore, but you know, he did
No,
some
he's
of
at Sony
Obsidian's
now.
most famous. Yeah, he's at Sony. It's so good.
I didn't know that role existed. I never heard of it being internal before.
It's rare. It's not common, but like
Darren is internal with Supergiant as well. He's a staff audio director.
Yeah, that one makes sense. So, but does that mean that most composers are also audio directors, or are they just like how?
No, the vast majority are not.
Wow.
Most games, the audio director is, among other things, tasked with hiring the composer and being their main conduit.
Them.
Yeah.
So if you're just a composer, I don't know.
You're worthless.
I guess, yeah. But my head is like, how is there work for you all the time?
I mean, there often is.
You're very, very lucky.
Yeah.
If you're very, very good. But the other thing is, like, from a studio perspective, it's way cheaper if you just have to pay someone's salary than if you have to, pay them properly for the rights to what they're creating.
That's interesting.
Which is probably a very controversial take.
Liam is one of the most Liam is definitely one of the most
pro corporation. He's a real capitalist.
If
right
anything,
in replacing Mike.
If anything, it's the opposite. It's Liam is one of the most supportive of the considerations of outsourcers. I would to put it as broadly as possible. Like typically we are comparatively quite low on the food chain, but also I don't think that's an unfair trade. We get a lot of sovereignty in exchange for that, and that's actually worth, at least in my case, I feel that's quite valuable. You're not bound to the fate of one project or one studio the way everybody else is. Yes. And that's one of those reasons why, internal profit sharing, for example, amongst the core dev team that is not extended to outsourcers as a default way of being, I don't think is particularly unfair, because if that thing tanks, they're out of a job. I'm not. I can go look for another job. I can also land another job before I even finish this job.
Yeah.
And so like our risk assessment is totally different.
Yeah.
And I think it's perfectly fair. But all that said, Liam is very, very gracious in his treatment, regardless, in a way that is atypical.
I've known Liam longer than I've known you, Austin. It's been a long time.
It's because Liam,
I think I've known you since I was a teenager, Liam. I think I met you when I was 19.
Well, in fairness, that was six months ago. But I'm fond of referring to Liam as
20. You don't have to make fun of us. Okay.
No, it's true. Liam, I refer to as the when we first met, and I was getting his, story of what do you do? Who are you? I quickly came to the conclusion Liam is Australian Megan Scavio.
That's not bad. I can see that.
At least in those days, that was the role you were pivoting out of. When we met, basically.
That's really interesting. Megan Scavio, for anyone who doesn't know, runs DICE, but is also, I don't know if this is how you meant it, Austin, but a very warm, smiley, very kind. I'm always very happy to see Megan, and I would say I would feel the same about you, Liam.
And also
Megan is lovely.
Person I like.
And she also ran GDC before DICE, GDC. And she was like the professional, make sure everybody knows each other person. Like I met so many people through her over the years, because she just was this magnet to if you were where she was, other people who were noteworthy would be nearby, invariably. And it seems like Liam has, was the Australian ecosystem version of that. Because everyone I've ever met is like, I know Liam.
Yeah.
Well, there's something about running events. So I used to work with the Game Developers Association of Australia and ran Game Connect Asia Pacific, Australia's game development conference, for several years. And I think that kind of cements you as a central figure, whether you want to be or not. Because you get to meet people. All of the keynotes, you have to coordinate people. You go overseas, you represent the country. For a very brief period, I was probably the person that people thought about when they thought about game development in Australia.
That's cool.
It was a weird time.
See, we're talking about tolerable types of fame. It's just a couple of game devs.
Not as bad. Not nearly as bad. I think when I was much younger, I studied to be an actor before I got into games. And I used to think I wanted to be famous. And now that I actually know famous people, I'm like, no, please no. Please just let me be well known within the sphere of people who appreciate what I do.
I'd like to be respected by my peers. That's it.
That's it.
No. Leave it there. It's fine. Well, you're doing a great job, Liam. And thank you for joining us to talk about
Of
Baldur's Gate
course.
3 and Taylor Swift. So we've
Pretty much.
heard from Austin.
This has been a crash course on the normal goings on of this.
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, yeah.
We were always
I have
worried that if
watched
we had a
this.
guest, it would fuck up the show. But I'm glad that our
Absolutely not.
our drive to stay off topic is well with Liam here as well. So we've heard from
The
Austin
topic.
about this game about Stray Gods for quite some time. I think we probably had like 3 episodes that have almost entirely been about Stray Gods.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing about it for what feels like years.
I'm so sorry.
Now. No.
I'm so sorry,
From you
audience.
too, to be fair. How are you feeling this week about it finally coming out?
It's weird because originally, obviously, we were coming out on the 3rd, and then Baldur's Gate moved to the 3rd. We were like, we don't want to be on the same day as Baldur's Gate, and we've still got some issues with consoles, so let's move out a little bit. So we moved to the 10th, but unfortunately, that meant that the game is going to ship while I'm on holiday on the other side of the world without a laptop. So it's just like really weird feeling.
How are you talking to us now?
I'm on my mobile phone.
That's why
nice.
it's a square, I assume.
Yeah, that's
Your quality's
why
really
I
good,
didn't even
though.
notice that.
That's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I was imagining I look like a little blurry potato. But
No, it's great.
yeah, it's
You're
it's
beautifully
a
in
weird feeling,
focus,
like
potato.
it's excellent. That's how we want our potatoes, honestly. Like beautifully
It's not in focus. I don't want it.
it.
So, are you gonna try and let yourself have the holiday? Americans call that vacation, by the way. If you call it holiday, they get confused. Are you gonna try and just
That's
have
true.
your holiday, or do you think you'll pay attention to the reception this
Well,
week?
I'm over here for like a month, basically.
Oh wow,
So
Holy shit.
yeah,
that's awesome.
because
realize that.
well, this is like I haven't really had a proper holiday since we started. So I think I had a 2-week break in like a proper break in the last like 5 years.
Damn.
And so
The amount of fires this guy was putting out on a daily basis just to because and it's just normal game dev, right? Like it's not even that it was like some troubled production. The team was lovely. There was no big like blowout drama
But
kind of stuff
games
of like
are hard.
but yeah, and if even just the calendar of like a cast of this size
Yeah.
and like complexity of schedule.
Oh my
'cause they're
god,
all
trying
in
to
demand.
coordinate the voice actors. That
Yeah.
took years off my life.
Yeah, I can't even
like,
imagine all of those people's schedules.
Well, and bearing in mind
Hell of a
also
cost.
with Troy as our director, we had to find the intersection of Troy's
Yeah.
availability and each of
Right.
them, and
And
then a
also
studio.
availability.
Yeah.
Like
Damn.
it's wild. I think we ended up working with like 7 or 8 different studios just to make
Wow.
sure that we could. Yeah, it was wild. But like our primary partner studio, Out Loud Audio, who are like brilliant. They're based in Burbank. They did the vast majority of sessions. Yeah, like it's super weird coming up to release. It's been 5 years of my life. And that's very hard to comprehend. And also like it's
Yeah.
been probably like 4 years of us working together, Austin, then I guess.
In terms of like, I mean, we met 5 years ago, and then you know things kind of
Like,
ramped.
took a- yeah.
You know, it was like a sort of slow and steady burn for the first probably year and a half, and then. But I always think Ellie was commenting on Instagram earlier today and made me remember that, you know, you all were here, you and David and Ellie
Yeah,
and
at
Troy
the
and
beginning
Laura
of 2020.
here. And yeah, we christened the pandemic because you all
Yeah.
had to change your flight because you thought we won't be able to get back in the country. Like
You
there,
got stuck, or thought
They
you
were
were
gonna
get stuck
be.
in LA?
Very close, because we were over for the Game Developers Conference, and so we were like, okay, let's spend like 2 weeks with Austin, starting to work on all of the songs, like very very early conceptual. Like, let's go through things, let's get all on the same page, and thank fucking God we did, because then like you know the pandemic
and it didn't
hit, and
see
we
you
had
again
to-
for fucking
we didn't see each
years.
other throughout the entirety of songwriting.
Yeah.
And if I can't even, the idea of having not done that, if we had have skipped to that,
Everyone's
I
doing
don't
it
know,
over
it would've
Zoom,
been-
depressed and terrified in 2020.
I mean, we also did that. So
yeah, but you got a little bit before that.
we got
No,
a
but we
little
were
bit
able to
before
have
that.
these like like 5 and 6 hour meetings where we talk through a scene. I fuck around on the piano and say like, well, I can kind of imagine it moving like this and having this kind of vibe. And we were able to, like, the first handful of scenes really kind of step through them in a way.
Yeah.
And also with Laura coming over and being able to kind of like get those first little taste tests of,
that was really
of how her voice
too.
feels with certain registers and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, we were kind of picturing doing that, the whole time, like a lot of, like recurring and spending a lot of time in the studio, and having multiple actors in the studio at the same time was also something Troy was felt strongly about.
Yes, we really wanted to do that. And then we
the
found
SAG
out
rules
that
fully forbade it.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, so
we couldn't even go, even though Out Loud is quite literally down the block from me, not even down the street. Like, I could hit them with a rock. We weren't allowed in the booth because the COVID. SAG rules were basically like, the COVID.
So even though it's there, you had to do it all by Zoom.
By Zoom.
Yeah.
Damn.
Because the only way we could put people in the booth together was if they had both had PCR tests like that day. And
right.
So like the idea of trying to do that for everyone was insane.
Because those costs, like, those were a few $100
and they were like hard to find at the time. Yeah, I was still doing stuff with Rooster Teeth occasionally, and I would have to get a PCR test for it, which I always was like, sick, free PCR test. They're like $150 or something at the time.
Yeah,
as a drive-through, and I had to do it every time. That's so nuts. Obviously, a lot of Ragnarok would have also been developed through COVID, but they had figured that all out before I got there because I started in November of that year. So it was like they had figured out whatever the workflow looked like for remote work. You had to figure it out like right at the start.
It was wild, and like figure it out while working on something that nobody had ever done before.
Yeah.
And so like there were no established pipelines because we were really making them up ourselves.
Yeah, you didn't even have a pipeline for the game, let alone for doing it remotely. That's nuts.
I would argue in hindsight, tell me if you agree with this, Liam, because I would actually say that of all the times within our production for COVID to have started, that was probably the best, because it's not like we were halfway through recording our cast one way and then had to shift to recording them another way. We hadn't really even begun the cast recordings. That feels like that would have been way worse.
I think shifting gears would have been much, much harder.
Yeah.
But it was a wild experience. Yeah, like I often think, like I don't think I'm ever going to work on a project like that ever again.
I mean, it was in terms of that, hopefully not. Hopefully there's no second
absolutely.
pandemic.
But even it just like working on something that's so different and so unique and intricate, exactly, and where everyone was so keen and on board. Like I really hope we can replicate that. But like Stray Gods really was like, and continues to be incredibly special as a project.
What do you, I've asked Austin this, I think I asked him last episode, what do you hope people take away from it more than anything else? Like, what do you want players to think or take?
I just want them to have a good time. Ultimately, like, I just, like, we make games because we have a morbid fascination with, making ourselves work hard and feel bad, clearly. But I think also because we want to connect with other people. We want to create experiences that people enjoy and that are meaningful to them. And I think really the thing I hope that people walk away with is connection with the characters that we've created and this space that we created. And Dave often talks about, songs as being a shortcut to the heart. And that's how we kind of tried to use the songs in Stray Gods. It was like we had this fantastic, Dave's superpower is characters. Like everyone knows, like he creates these incredible casts of characters. And so we really leaned into that. And I really hope that people will just walk away having fallen in love with these characters that have been brought to life so incredibly by this insane cast of performers with music by some of the world's best, like that's.
I'm pretty in love with that Minotaur.
Look,
he's
that song,
it's like everyone's favorite to talk about him.
Song.
Yeah, it's not near the start of the game, right? Because like I said, I'm streaming it on
It's like
Thursday.
in the middle.
Okay, I might be able to get there. Maybe I'll go until I
You might be
get
able to
to
get there.
Minotaur.
It'd be around like It depends on how. That's the problem. It depends on how fast you play. But I don't understand this because for me, I'm like it's pretty set length because I play a very certain way. But the reports that people come in, like some people can finish the game in like 4.5 hours, and some people finish the game in like 12 hours. And I do not understand how that variation is possible. But like your average playthrough is probably like 6 to 10, 6 to 8, somewhere in there. So I reckon the Minotaur section is probably smack bang in the middle there.
Okay, we'll see if I can get there. Maybe not. But one big downside here is because of the strikes. Like I'm obviously going to play the game and I'm very excited about it. And I was like, Rahul, you should join me, but we don't know if he can.
He can because so video games are not affected by the strike.
Worried about how if it's seen as promotion, if that would be seen as scabbing anyway.
So there's two things here. One of them is public perception. The other one is SAG's...
The actual rules.
Like the actual rules. The actual rules around video games, and promoting video games, that's totally fine. We're still
so your
working
actors
on
are
video
all
games.
still allowed to talk about it? Because obviously the actors are
Absolutely.
a much bigger part of this than they feel like they are of even most games.
100%.
Your cast is super important.
It's super important. And the interactive contract is not struck. So video game performers can still talk about the projects they're in. They can still record. They can still do all that kind of stuff.
And for the record, Troy and
very
Laura,
specific ones.
Yeah, it's same thing. Television animation is also not struck, but feature
Yes.
animation is, and
Yes.
and like live action, everything. I think, but for the record, Anjali, Troy, Laura, have all within the last 24 hours shared stuff, so I don't they're and all of them obviously
we did it. We went and did our
ear.
research. Yeah, because we would never have asked people to promote or even given the materials if we had been
destroy your own reputation for that. That'd be so nuts.
we would have been like, hey,
scab
your help. Thank you. No, absolutely not. We would have just been like, we really appreciate your help.
Yeah.
Please abide by the strike. That is
Please
the right
DM your
thing to do.
friends. Just quietly.
Yeah, just do it on the DL.
Yeah, even when we went to the Oppenheimer screening, Jeff Keighley put together an Oppenheimer screening with Universal, and we were like, can we go to this? Because is that not Universal? But it was not promotional in that they were not allowing photos. So it was a screening, but it was not a promotional screening. Yeah, so a bunch of actors were there, but they weren't taking photos of us, they weren't advertising it, none of that. So it was deemed to be okay. You're still allowed to go see a movie. You just can't promote a movie. It's a lot.
It's a really fascinating time, because we were really worried about the strike and because we don't want to do anything that hurts people's livelihoods. We don't want to recommend things that are counter to things that are good for them.
Sure.
So yeah, we wanted to make sure that we were all in the clear.
Glad everybody's still allowed to. Then I might try and recruit more of those people for streams because I'd love to have Erica. Such a fan of her. And
video games and animation, a-okay. It's just feature stuff, TV, etc. that's struck. SAG has posted stuff about this before. You can go digging for it, but it is super interesting. It's a weird time.
It's a weird time to live in LA. I've been to parties and stuff recently where people are just the strikes. Because one of my friends is a writer's assistant, and she just got fired because she can't work anymore. Wow. And they told her, we'll hire you back as soon as the strike's done, but we can't keep giving you a salary.
We just can't pay you because you can't work. Yeah.
So she has to. I guess the mandate is she goes to the strikes twice a week, but it's just zero income while this is all happening. It's affected a lot of people.
It's such a fascinating game of chicken and war of attrition kind of situation, because obviously the headlines made the rounds of some unnamed studio executives saying we think we can basically last longer
Hold them out.
while they starve. But then I saw another headline the other day that said Universal, I think it was Universal or Warner's, war chest savings was dipping below $100 million. And it's these companies can't run on fumes.
They
so
can't
like,
either.
Yeah.
They got shareholders they have to appease. Like, it's hard. I think it's almost harder for them than it is for most of SAG who
100%.
have second jobs anyway because they have to. Like, I don't know. It's
either
nuts.
way, it's a bloody. It's like, yeah, irrespective of kind of who wins who's harder for this Olympics, it is brutal on both, and it's in both's interest to resolve it because basically both are just burning cash and not bringing anything in. Like every party involved is not benefiting from.
I wonder if there's a hit to the California
status.
economy.
I'm sure there would be.
Well, long term, I wonder if
probably
we'll
like
see.
I bet if
I think
if
so
more
much of
stuff
LA is like Hollywood funded.
Yeah.
But if more was filmed here, I bet it would be an even bigger impact.
True.
But because so much shooting
Just
has
they
moved
live
out
here.
of LA, it's more
It's
like
true. It'd probably be like places that film regularly.
Vancouver.
Vancouver,
Atlanta.
Toronto,
Yeah.
Atlanta. You know,
Gold Coast.
there used to be.
Gold
I
Coast.
was going to
Shout
say
out to
there.
Gold Coast.
There used to be a lot in Louisiana, and I don't know if they had huge tax incentives that were making it like almost like a little mini Hollywood outpost there. But I
Yeah.
don't know if that's still going. It certainly was for a while, much like Atlanta. You know, like
Yeah.
Tyler Perry built a fucking unbelievable
that's
state of the art mega complex out there for shooting and just fully relocated everything and makes tons of stuff in Atlanta. And I imagine like strikes are hugely impactful on their local economy because
Yeah.
it's probably a pretty big part of it at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you guys, the games industry is not struck, so you guys aren't affected, though at the same time. It's not like I want to say glad you're not affected when it's like,
No, 100%.
if people need to strike, they need to strike. But glad that people are still allowed to be excited about the game.
100%. I mean, I think the reality is like the interactive contract when it is because the reason that things are being struck on, I don't know the correct terminology, but the reason a strike is occurring is because those contracts have run out. And so it is the negotiation period, whereas the interactive contract has like a different period. So when this contract runs out, it's very possible that video game actors will also choose to strike because
because they're still SAG, obviously, and I know it's still SAG Productions.
Yeah.
Like any of the video game acting I've done has still been SAG. But is there like a video game subset that has to negotiate with the AMPTP?
Yeah, so there's basically the way that SAG works for anyone, because like I think this is pretty mysterious to most people. So
yeah, I know more about the WGA than I know about SAG by a mile.
100%, and I think it's clearer, to be honest. But SAG has a series of contracts. Like each medium has a different contract. So you have like television, you have feature films, you have the interactive contract under which games sits. You have animation. You have like audio and sound recording. You have like so there's all of these different contracts, and they are
weirdly
all
SAG also includes singers. Session singers are also part of SAG, which is its own contract.
So yeah, they're all like separate, and so I think that some of them just happened to like be negotiated at the same time, and so when the interactive one is up, it'll be really interesting to see what happens because I think the last time that it was negotiated, there were a lot of things that SAG wanted that they didn't get. So it is going to be very interesting, but there's also like the video game industry really doesn't work the same way as Hollywood does. So there's no like peak body to negotiate with in quite the same way. So yeah, it's really interesting.
That's my understanding that there's not really an equivalent to the what is it? AMT, yeah. In games, there isn't sort of some entity on behalf of like, and it would be on behalf of who, like the publishers, Microsoft, Sony,
and they
Ubisoft,
all run so
EA.
differently that like, I can't even fathom. Like the closest thing we have to even a board is the ESA, and that wouldn't apply to workers. Like
and it's it's really interesting. So I'm very curious to see.
Well, does the ESA really do anything other than help define the ratings that are sort of?
I mean, like, and I guess E3, but I don't know that they really do. I think they sometimes put out public statements about things, but like,
well, yeah, they have. They're the peak body for games in the US. So like, technically speaking, I think they respond to different like PR crises. They do research. They do a ton of different stuff. And I think they do less nowadays.
They're definitely the closest we have to a board, but I don't think they'd be the people you'd negotiate.
They would
with.
not be the people to negotiate with because there's no. Yeah, it's
well,
very.
They have no
fragmented.
power over.
Yeah.
It's not like the ESA governs how EA operates.
No one does,
in
right?
terms of,
Like,
yeah, it's a fascinating. Especially
just
because
Andrew
also
Wilson. He's one of my favorite impressions to do.
games.
Hi everybody, Andrew Wilson here, because he's Australian as well.
What
Games,
a time to be alive.
Games. Also, I feel like to complicate things even further, self-distribution is a million times more viable for games than for film. Really, so like
Which
putting out your own
creates all
game on
kinds of other
Steam without a.
issues.
But yeah, well, exactly, because now you have 50,000 indies. Like, who is Supergiant supposed to talk to? If they're supposed to be, because they're like, we chart our own course, we do our own thing.
Yeah.
You know, like
The Supergiant they don't work with the union. Like they do stuff outside of the union. They have their own contracts that they do. The thing that I find really interesting is about the fragmentation of this space is like particularly around audio and audio rights and technical reproduction.
You're just saying that to pander to Austin. You just said it because he
have
wanted to hear
so
it.
much. No, but like mechanical royalties, which are royalties that like musicians get when something is like played on the radio, or like these are organized and paid through specific bodies that video games doesn't have. And Steam won't pay this out. So like Austin doesn't get money like unless a publisher gives it to him from Steam if one of his soundtracks is sold through Steam. Or if
Steam won't. If the soundtrack gets sold through Steam, they don't pay the composer.
No, they'll pay like the
not unless
publisher
you
who put it up.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
if you
interesting.
And then
it's
you
not that they
negotiate with the
can't.
publisher.
Yeah, it's just the default assumption is the vast majority of games selling on Steam, the publisher will have full and total control of the music as a subset. So if they deem as their own internal agreement with the composer to share in anything, that's on them to decide, and it's a wild west of yeses and nos.
Does that mean they would be allowed to sell your score on Steam, like the soundtrack on Steam, without asking? Or would that have to be contractually agreed upon beforehand?
They would have to have the rights to do that.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, which would have been like basically if that were happening, it would have meant when we were first negotiating, I was like, well, if you're willing to pay more up front, then sure. Like I've had that before. I've had projects where they said, can we cut you a check so that we never have to keep track of royalties? Like, what would be an amount that would make you feel
it's much more convenient.
Oh yeah. Well, that was the thing. Like on that the one I'm especially thinking of, I was like, I kind of did some napkin math and I was like, I'm pretty sure that the amount they're offering is more than I would ever make on royalties on this. So like, sold. Go for it. Have fun. Enjoy your album. But then there's other times where you're like, this one has potential, you know, and I will add an interesting wrinkle is those societies that Liam was alluding to that collect this public performance
makes them sound like
royalty.
secret cabal
society.
They're called PROs, performance royalty organizations, and each country has one that's like has essentially they operate that territory. So I'm suddenly blanking on the name of the one that is the Australian one. I started to say PRS, but that's the UK one.
I talk to them regularly. They're so lovely.
Liam! No! Austin's got his Google one again. You be our oracle.
Come on, you can do this.
I know. It's something.
It is A.
Always A.
Is it AGMA?
Australian.
No.
Yeah,
no.
Close.
Australian Games Audio? AGA?
Well, it's not a games thing. They're
it's like
because they're just audio.
Well.
APRA.
Yeah.
Cute.
Sounds
like
so yeah.
Pokemon.
Their whole thing is they pay royalties on public exhibition of music. So like it all started as it started with Tin Pan Alley composers in the U.S. They created ASCAP and BMI as the two rival ones that paid on live theater performances of music where the performer was not the composer. So they were like, we need to find a way to create an avenue for a composer to make money when their music is being sung like in a theater. And then that became like the big moneymaker then was like the television and radio weren't really, mainstream television didn't even exist, and radio was not what it, was to become, because this was all, over 100 years ago now, or approximately 100 years ago. And then they were like, that's very much public exhibition. And so composers, and weirdly, movie theaters in the US do not count as public exhibition, but everywhere else in the world they do. So if you score a Marvel movie, for example, that crushes it in theatrical box office around the world, you can make literally millions of dollars just as the composer, but you'll get zero from the US until it then airs on television if it shows up on TV. And obviously streaming is like one of the big battlegrounds for composers now, because streaming makes a fraction of what television does in terms of those royalties. But interestingly, PRS, which is the UK one, that probably stands for Performance Royalty Society or whatever, but it's the UK one of these. They made a deal specifically with Sony so that sales of games on the PlayStation Store in the UK count. So I actually get royalties on every game I've ever scored when it's sold in the UK.
No way.
On PlayStation.
That's awesome.
So it's like a subset of a subset of a subset. But that was like the idea, and the hope is that represents a tipping point, and they're able to broker more, because the big one they're hoping they can figure out is Twitch, because that is basically television. But the main thing everyone's worried about is all the automated content ID shit trips up, where like right now the publishers have defaulted to basically trying to not involve the royalty organizations, because people's streams get interrupted or demonetized.
Right, I've had streams pulled because of I had a sponsored stream get pulled because there was a licensed song in it that I was unable to turn off. So even though the sponsor was paying me to stream it, it got auto flagged because of a song in the game. And I feel like from my perspective as someone who does not produce music, is that YouTube does quite a good job. Okay. I'm willing to accept that. So the YouTube system also doesn't work on your side either.
The problem is they're automating something that's super complicated, and there's no like person you can call. I see. And okay, case in point, when Aliens Fireteam came out, we had many months of the game being out where there was no soundtrack album, and the album data is what ultimately is getting fed, because they're not taking the music from the game files or whatever. It's all about commercial. It's the commercialization. So
they would have had nothing to flag. Not that YouTube does flag video games. I've never seen anybody do that other than Nintendo. But
well, they don't do it on purpose, but it happens automatically by mistake all the time. Because what happens is we didn't have an album out, so there are streamers and YouTubers and everybody who's playing Fireteam has no issues. Then Hollywood Records, which is owned by Disney, because Fox is owned by Disney, and Fox is the IP holder for the Aliens franchise, they put out the soundtrack album, and suddenly it was like all these VODs and streams just all overnight, including I had uploaded, like I do nerdy behind the scenes videos and stuff on my own YouTube channel, and I had a bunch of all my videos got taken down overnight as well. And so I called the developer and I called the Disney folks, and I was like, you're screwing yourself, because I said, never mind that it's an inconvenience for me, but all these streamers and stuff, like this is a game that's fun. It's a co-op.
Yeah,
it's a co-op shooter. Like it's fun to do on a stream with friends. Like that's a big part of the audience. You're screwing yourself if those streams are getting shut down. And the best they could do in the short term was just whitelist my channel.
Yes.
And I was like, that's lame though. That's poking a hole in like all these leaking spots in the dam. I said that's not solving the bigger problem. But the thing was, no one did this on purpose, because now
there's a series of options when you upload it, right, where you can specify the level of aggression that you want the algorithm to take, as I recall.
Kinda. It's a little bit. I wish they gave you more specific. Like we had this recently. I don't know.
Are you worried about that with Stray Gods when you've made the 4 albums, or because you're not through a publisher with that? Is that not going to be an issue?
Well, I was just about to say we just had this drama just recently, and I'm hoping it's solved. But because I am administering. it was weird though, where like I always put things up where I'm like, I don't want there to be any restrictions. There should be no. It's okay with me. Sometimes the system will acknowledge, it will recognize what it is, but then just say, "You're good." Like it will say, "We see that this piece is that, but there's no issues." Yeah. Obviously, in a sense, the ideal world is sort of like how it was on the beginning days of Fireteam, where it didn't even know that there was music there. It just sees it as audio and it can't differentiate it from people talking or something. Yeah. But once the music is now out, like on Spotify and stuff, that there's an imprint of that file that it can recognize even underneath other stuff. It's actually pretty amazing when you think about it from a technological
They also
standpoint.
have an editing software where I've never actually tried it, but you can just mute music. So I guess the AI knows to just mute the music track and leave everything else, which is crazy.
It's the same way that you get those videos of people being like, here's the isolated vocal of Freddie Mercury or whatever.
True.
Where you can go and sculpt out everything that's not the voice. We can do the flip. We can mute the music.
I sing a lot of karaoke stuff like that all the time. Exactly like that.
It's pretty impressive. And so anyway, so we had an issue just the other day where I literally, Katie from Summerfall messages me and was like, our TikTok just got flagged for our trailer, including the music from the game, our own trailer. And I was like, I don't get it. I completely, and what we discovered is that TikTok is just a wild west of insanity, and they just make and change their own rules randomly. And like, because it wasn't a YouTube problem, and it wasn't, as far as I can tell, it wasn't anything I did wrong.
So what did you get flagged by?
It thought that the music was not permitted to be included, basically.
Based on nothing?
Yes.
Wow.
Because it knows the music. Here was my hypothesis. You can just like make an audio file, like a trailer. Like it is a bespoke piece of audio that has been mixed and has voiceover and like sound effects of text coming on screen and all that. And you can upload that as a component part of a video. And so like, you know how it'll say original sound or whatever in the audio description. It sees basically copyrighted material as a component part of that original sound, and it does not allow that. But if you upload a thing without music and then use their internal database to find it and add it as like part of the TikTok app, then it knows it's fine and it lets you do that. So my hypothesis was it was because they basically didn't like that we didn't search for it within TikTok. Because you know how people will just like record themselves and then they'll search for a song they like within TikTok.
Because you didn't do it the right way, they just assumed that it was copyrighted content based on nothing.
And there are like also different kinds of accounts on TikTok. So like a business account can't use any copyrighted music, whereas just a regular person's account can use any music, even if it is copyrighted. So like our theory was that maybe our account, because it is above a certain follower threshold, is in like a third category where it's like not quite one or the other. It all seems we seem to have resolved it, or it has resolved on itself. But yeah, like it's always a worry whenever you release anything like this. Like
it's also when music is the game in this case. Like that's why
I was
glad you had that
terrified
experience, Austin, that you knew what to be terrified of.
Well, that's why we were really glad that it didn't break anything else, because like we would have known very quickly.
Yeah. I have like a ghost YouTube channel where I upload things to see if they're gonna get struck before like
I
when I do
my private.
Well, I like to, because I don't know if my account has any sort of flags or like whitelisting or something. So because they're so shady on the algorithms. Like, for example, I don't monetize my channel ever, and so certain permissions I think change once you do. And so I'm like, my assistant and I created a dummy channel, and I'll just like we have these 4 albums coming out for Stray Gods, and I uploaded all 4 in their entirety onto the Ghost channel just to make sure that all hell didn't break it, and all 4 were completely left alone. So it was like, okay, well that's a very good sign that we're not going to get fucked.
Yeah,
plus,
and I mean,
would you have any issue with somebody doing that? With just like uploading all the
people
soundtracks?
already have.
Yeah,
like people. Yeah, well, because we've had 2 demos, so there are like lots of people who have been like, oh, here is like every path through X song, except that I'm almost certain that they actually didn't nobody yet has captured every path through either
so cool.
Pan or Apollo and put it on YouTube. Every single one I've seen, I'm like, that's not comprehensive.
Wow.
My favorite was on the very first day of the Ludonaricon demo, when like an hour in, somebody uploaded like a 20-minute video that said Pan every path, and it was 3.
Yeah.
It was 3 runs through it, and I was like, oh, bless your heart.
Not even
Like,
close.
yeah.
Like they just did like the good, the bad, the middle. Like they didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that
so
they
many
just.
more than that.
I think they've said the 3 different traits,
Yeah.
and then left it at that.
It doesn't occur to them that behind there's 3 doors, and behind each of those
There's
are
another
3
3
more
doors.
doors. And so like there are some places where it creates a false illusion of maybe there being only 3, because in the case of the Pan song, the paths converge on one of 3 possibilities before branching back out again. So like if you play it 3 ways and you choose each one of those 3, it might create the impression, oh, I see, there's basically 3 variations of this song, but it's like, there's actually way more than that. I actually just
I think
had
that's
this.
going to be fun for you guys to watch. Like it's again like so branching in this case. That people are gonna
every
have such
time-
different playthroughs.
I still see new stuff. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I've worked in this game for 5 years, and every now and then I will come across like a node or like a part of a song that I literally never heard before,
That's so cool.
and it's wild.
Yeah, it was fun to. I have a version of that. There's definitely some that I hear much less frequently. That's why I'll send, even as recently as like a few weeks ago, I'll send Liam a message. I'm like, can you open the editor and just remind me how we even get to this one?
No way.
Because I'm looking at my documents and they're kind of contradicting each other. And so then Liam opens it and we're like screen sharing going, oh, okay, so you have to do this and then this and then this.
That's
and
so
then if you
cool.
also do this, then that's how you'll reveal that bit. Because
to
I
have
was
worked on the game for as long as you have and you both have that is amazing.
It's David is the only one who truly has it all in his head, and
It's crazy.
even then, like with the songs, he's often like, "Whoa."
Wild. Yeah,
Doesn't
you've
it-
made something so big.
That just also just like swinging it back to Baldur's Gate, knowing what we did, and then like you play a game that or like Divinity Original Sin 2, where you just go, their version of that is scary. Just the sheer amount of contingencies and the fact that like there's no real, like I remember when I first started playing Divinity, I fucking love that game.
Me too.
And I was like, I just realized you spend all this time crafting your main character in the opening of the game, and then you can just kind of like abandon them.
Or sometimes you
could-
have to because I didn't realize that a fire and a water spell would cancel each other out. In the character creator, did I? And like after like 40 hours, you have to respec. Like it's
Yeah,
it's a
and
lot.
you realize like this thing is so variable. I just kept thinking, and the fact that there's character replies to virtually every NPC, like one of your members of your party will chime in a way that's sort of reasonably specific to them, and I just thought the spreadsheets under
those
the hood of this thing.
interjections, they're wild. Like when we were working on Siege of Dragonspear and like Baldur's Gate 2 Enhanced Edition, which is weird. It's like I've worked on Baldur's Gate before, which is very strange. Dave and I both have like really complicated feelings around Baldur's Gate 3, I think. We're very excited for it, but it's also like we worked on the series for such
weird.
a long time that we had a very specific idea of like what a Baldur's Gate 3 would look like. So I'm really excited to see what theirs is, but like interjections like from party NPCs in other dialogues were always one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Because they make the world come alive, but they're also so complicated to do well.
I asked if
and
I could. I haven't heard back from PRA, and I don't want to put him on the spot right now or anything. But I would really love to have some writers for that game on my writing podcast because I just can't even fathom how they did it.
Its RPG dialogue is wild. Like,
yeah, I've had to write some before, and it was even that for me to make sure that every line fed into whatever the next line was going to be without the performance being strange. I just had to act it out myself every time. So I've written, like branching dialogue for 3 pages, and then I have to go through and pick every choice and speak it out loud, which I do not normally do, just to make sure these made sense as sentences, which is like so much extra work, even as a writer.
It is its own skill. It's wild to me because that's actually how I started writing. And so like it comes to me very naturally now, but it's the most fucked up way to write.
Yeah, to be clear as well, I'm not talking about Santa Monica Studio, just so nobody makes that a inaccurate Reddit headline. Like the time that I said...
Alanah has done a ton of stuff, gang.
I said saved on this podcast once, and they thought I said same, and it got to Reddit, which is really stupid. So to be clear, I'm not talking about Santa Monica
Bless
Studio.
y'all.
To your point, Liam, David's ability to somehow retain all of those independent branches clear in his head is so bizarre, where we'd be working on a song and I go, wouldn't it be cool if, if like Grace says this, and he'd go, well, 7 scenes earlier, there's this one possible line that if you do X and Y, she'll say this with Freddie, and then that would potentially contradict this or not. So we might need to have 2 versions in the song depending on what the player chose in those early. And you're like, I'm like, start over. And I'm like trying to look up in the documentation, where's the thing? And he's just like patiently like, catch up with me here. And it's just, I was blown away. His ability to retain.
Well, it's very funny because it's only true while he's working on it. And then as soon as he's like moved on to the next project, it all just, so like you ask him about it. Yeah. Like it's wild, but then he'll remember. You ask him about Dragon Age. My favorite thing about working with Dave is sometimes like you can ask like some obscure Dragon Age question, and he won't actually remember the correct lore. He'll remember the lore from a version 3 versions before they shipped. And it's my favorite thing in the world to be like, wait, was that the shipped version or was that a version you worked on a year before launch?
At SMS, it's being like, wait, is this the canon or is that a thing I spoke about in a meeting 3 years ago? It's very confusing.
Names are the worst for that.
It's rough.
Like we renamed all of the songs for like in Stray Gods pretty recently, I would say, right, Austin? Like,
I still have to look up some. A lot of the songs I have to check again to remember what we settled on as the final, because it's still very. I mean, I still think of the game as being called Idols. So I'm slow to change. I don't even think of the game as being called Chorus. So
Idols for anyone listening, that was like our original code name for the game. Before that, it was Project Bacchus because we needed something. But it's wild that like I've been with these names for months and months and months, and I still have to be like Pan Song. I mean, I can teach you.
Yeah, because it's how it was like introduced to your brain,
just ingrained, and how we wrote it. Like,
So when is the review embargo?
Review embargo is tomorrow.
How are you feeling about that?
Curious. I don't know how I'm going to react. Like, other games that I've worked on, like, I mean, I worked on Siege of Dragonspear, which was, not well rated at launch. And I've worked on games that, were very well rated at launch. Everyone is different. Like your reaction to like every single game. Like I don't know what your experience has been, but like mine has always, it's been wildly variable. I think this one I'm tired. Like I'm very, very tired. And so I think that will filter through and probably give me some distance. I think I'll probably focus less on specifics and more on like the general picture, which is also an experience thing too. But there are invariably like there'll be some review where they'll say something and I'll be like, that's just so wrong, and I'll fixate on that. And I'll be like, oh my god, like if you had just asked us, we could have told you.
Yeah. How about you, Austin? How are you feeling about it?
I feel cautiously optimistic. I feel like it's enough of, because there's so little to measure it against. I think that people will actually kind of look at it on its own terms. In a lot of games,
which is rare.
And most games kind of understandably are not given that. Like I went and saw Indiana Jones with Troy, and the first thing out of his mouth when we got out of the theater afterward was, if there weren't other Indiana Jones movies, this would be a really great movie. If we weren't measuring it against some of the most beloved films, we would have a different measuring stick, fundamentally. And we can't even imagine
I felt about
that.
Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah, I've
sense.
seen the argument that game was given almost an like, setting aside the bugs and stuff they had at launch and the fact that they were kind of forced to launch, pretty ahead of schedule. Yeah. Setting all that aside, just on its own, I agree. Like, it had a lot to it. It just was coming on the back of like the most cherished and beloved trilogy ever. And so, it was. So I feel like we have the advantage of not that baggage, which I think if you look at it objectively and you see that it's not trying to be like, I thought one of the best ideas that you all had, Liam, of like this subtitle of a role-playing musical, as a way to say we are not an RPG. And I love David put that Twitter thread out a few weeks ago or whatever, saying let's set some expectations of RPG evokes a certain type of game. And we're not even trying to be that. We don't have any semblance of that. And so we want to distance ourselves. And the analogy I keep drawing is, I said, we're so committed to the pure sense of what role playing is that I said it's almost like improv theater, where other than the fact that as a piece of software with pre-recorded lines, there's only so far you can't actually improvise to the fullest extent of what a real improv group can be. But we're trying to evoke what that feels like, where it's like, well, what is my reaction in this moment? I want to think on my feet and kind of yes and my way through the situation. That's way closer to what we're trying to do than when you think of like, okay, I got to build my party and I want to think in terms of like what sort of specs my character has and all the shit that we love RPGs for. We're not even trying to do that. And so I feel like reviewers, broadly speaking, I don't know if I'm being idealistic or what, I feel like they will get that. And then whether they like it or not on its own terms will be whatever it shakes out to be. But we're not going to be sitting there reading these reviews like, what the fuck are you comparing us to Baldur's Gate for or whatever, when like we're just not even trying to be that. You may as well compare us to GTA or Call of Duty or something at that point. Like, we're just not doing that. And proudly not. Like, we found our own thing that we were excited about. And I feel like they'll get that. Whether they end up liking it or not is a separate thing, but I would be so frustrated if the reviews felt like they just fundamentally missed even the aspiration. So hopefully I'm not wrong even on that front. I've certainly felt that way before.
Reviewers will be picked based in accordance with people who understand and are excited about the genre. I would imagine.
Like the kind of people who want to review it are probably people who are likely to understand it. I think the other thing as a game developer is that you will judge your own game harsher than any reviewer could. Like, I absolutely know every flaw that Stray Gods has. Every single one, I'm way harsher on them than anyone else. Like, Os and I have gone back and forth, like when we were fixing bugs, for example, I know there are bugs in there that haven't been fixed that I'm like, oh my God, I wish. Awesome. There's one bug where its time is desynced by 2 seconds because, or it was, I think it's fixed now.
2 seconds?
But 2 seconds because there was a piece of score that somehow either had shifted or the end piece of score for the previous section had moved somehow. And I don't know how it happened, but nobody picked it up until...
Seems like Austin
I
was at fault.
I was the one who implemented them, so unfortunately it was
Liam, I'm letting you off the hook.
Me.
Liam deserves so much credit for the different hats that he wore. Like the fact that Liam spent so much time in engine doing audio specific work. Like, what person who's in a studio leadership role is also the one going, now should this transition happen at 9 milliseconds or 10 milliseconds? Like, we got into the shit really, really deep in. It wasn't high level. It was the lowest level that audio gets.
Yeah. I think we were at our smallest, we were probably 5. At our biggest, I think we were 25.
Damn.
So for what we made, it's I don't know how we did it.
The fact
honestly.
that we have as many actors as developers
that's nuts.
But the audio department is essentially Steve Green, myself, and sort of Liam on loan. And we had additional sound design as well. But it was Anyway, Liam gets a lot of credit for that, and I found a mistake in I can't remember if we talked about it or not, but one of the songs, I won't say which one because I don't want to encourage people to find it, but I did find a pathway mistake in one of the songs where I was like, it's possible for the character to reference something that they might not have heard, and it's really subtle, but it's like we worked so hard to make it feel like these callbacks are all contextual to your choices, the way like a musical theater is all about callbacks. And I realized I found one. It's pretty obscure, but I was like, fuck. And I'm like, I have to always be put in my place where I put every bug as this is game breaking. We can't ship.
I can confirm.
I have a bit of a hard time like hierarchically categorizing bugs of like, okay, this one can go. It tends to be either red alert or like not quite as red alert for me. I fully acknowledge it's a flaw. This is why I am not in charge. But
it makes sense actually. Yeah. Well, we won't keep you for any more longer, Liam. Thank you so much for staying up late for us. Appreciate it. And we're super late over there. Where can people find you on the internet if they would like to know more about you?
You can find me at Liam Esler, Liamesler, on pretty much any social media platform. Cool. In fact, pretty much all of them. And I might even post sometimes.
Ooh. And where can people get Stray Gods? What it's out now on?
Oh god, Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, out now on PC, on which you can access it via Steam, Epic Game Store, or Good Old Games. You can get it on PS5, PS4, Xbox One, Xbox Series S and X, and Nintendo Switch.
All the platforms.
Basically everything other than mobile.
I never want to release another game on so many platforms all at once at launch. It was heinous.
Yeah.
Shout out to Plastic Fern, who helped us a lot with that. But yes, go buy Stray Gods and play it, and then tell us what you think.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear. Everybody, check it out. I'm sure we'll continue to talk about it after I've been able to play it this week as well. Very excited. Thanks for joining us, Liam. Thanks for being here, Austin. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We will see you all in a couple of weeks, probably. Who knows? Bye-bye.